Well, good morning, everybody. Here in this shorter video, we're going to cover some of the big highlights from the recent weather system that came through and kind of walk you through the next couple of weeks and what we're maybe expecting a bit beyond that. First map is the last 72 hours of total accumulated snowfall. Outperformed some of the model forecasts from last week, especially down here in parts of Kansas and then stretching into the Midwest, where there's pretty widespread 4 to 8 inches of snow, especially to parts of Kansas. It's good to get the moisture back into that area, as this is one of our drier spots in the country. You do note that so far in the month of November, we've had very dry conditions throughout parts of the Midwest here. Some of the precipitation ranks here in the top 5 driest for a November on record. Our soil moisture is pretty low in this area as well, which is something we're going to be concerned about from now all the way through to next spring to see if this can revive itself. Mississippi River, though, did make a bit of a jump up. It's now at 5 feet below low stage, but a lot more needs to recover in that river system before we can kind of get out of the woods of having to worry too much about it. So much of what we're going to be talking about in terms of the pattern this week is going to be from a larger ridge that's building into Greenland. And if we could have gotten support from a large ridge in Alaska, we'd be talking about a very active pattern. But as it stands, we still have some activity with this pattern. It's going to start on Thursday with a low that's going to sneak out of parts of Texas, giving us this risk of severe storms. That same low is going to bring a little bit of precip into California, some snow into the southwest, which desperately needs, but we'll watch it later this week and weekend to be kind of a sizable system for the midsection of the United States. But before we get there, though, we have a deep freeze that's hitting parts of California out here, and we've also got some very strong winds coming across the Great Lakes, giving us the risk of some pretty hefty lake effect snow. In fact, take a look at this. High-res NAM this morning, you watch right up here. Some lake effect snow totals out of this. It's going to be pretty high off of parts of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. There's even a little front that sneaks through on Wednesday, delivering a little extra shot at snow. Most of the rest of the country, not a whole lot to talk about, so we'll keep an eye on these lake effect snow totals here, which several of these places, which characteristically get the biggest lake effect snows, could be adding up, well over a foot, and there's expected to be some places here on the end of Lake Ontario that maybe add up about 30 inches. From there, though, we're going to watch the jet stream by the time we get into this weekend finally dip a decent trough coming over the mountains. We're going to watch a weekend system coming out right in through this area with this particular pattern. Plus, the Pacific jet has enough momentum to kind of keep the moisture up in the Pacific Northwest, which is an area we've been watching pretty carefully. You can see that if I show you kind of the multi-model analysis here. Let's take you back to the beginning. Going through Tuesday into Wednesday, what we're going to watch is there's that low that came through California, comes right down here into the southwest. This is by Thursday night. The risk of strong to severe storms really shows up right in through this corridor here. It's in both models. And that low continues to press east on Friday, delivering some moisture into parts of the mid-Atlantic, getting up to the northeast, and then also down in the southeast, all areas that need to see more moisture out of this. The GFS is a bit faster on getting rid of it, but the European, I think, is going to be the one that produces the more precipitation. Then we get into the weekend. Look at the push coming in the northwest, and then watch this system right here on Sunday come out of the central U.S. I'm really focusing on the European model. This is early Sunday morning, getting through the day on Sunday into Monday. That's going to be another system late this week to keep a close eye on. Now, you notice there's some snow with all of this. So over the next week, as the flow increases in the northwest, decent snows in the Cascades, Northern Rockies, some better snows in the Four Corners states. And we'll watch that weekend system possibly drop a little bit in parts of Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin as it comes out here. New England, most of this is coming right now today. Overall, next 10 days, who's wettest? Well, that's what this map shows. It's the probability of getting at least an inch of total accumulated precip. The heavier side of this way down here in the south, right along the Gulf Coast and in the Pacific Northwest. Folks, are going to be drier. Canadian Prairie, much of the plains, pockets throughout the southwest. That continues to be the story going through this year. One of the bigger issues is we go back to that flow out of the northwest, which we don't want to see. It looks something like this. By day 10, December the 7th, that's what I don't like. I don't like convergent flow in this area. I like flow out of the southwest. That's where things are wettest. So where's our southwest flow? Here and there. So in the middle, it's coming over the top like this. So that's why we see drier in all 3 models in the central United States, but better in the northwest and better here in parts of the southeast. Temperature-wise, got a lot of cold air in the Central Valley of California this morning. It was there on Sunday morning. It'll be there again tomorrow morning. And look how far to the south the frost line gets. We're going to see those colder temperatures throughout much of the next 5 days, but more mild air begins to build in day 5 through 10 and really kind of sticks around in this first kind of half of the month of December. Bigger picture things, El Nino. It doesn't have its complementary positive phase of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation to the north. We'd love to see that. That would give us a whole lot more confidence in the long-range forecast for the United States. But this El Nino right now is only about 1.5 degrees C above average, so that's about a full degree under what we thought it'd be at this time, using some of those projections from summer and early fall. But as it stands, this pattern isn't going to be really well set through the month of December, so don't get settled in any one long-range outlook. This is what the CPC released last Friday. It's their forecast from the 9th to the 22nd. A bit more mild and dry north and wetter and cooler across the south. In other words, they're kind of putting on fast forward some of the stuff we've got going on right now. Elsewhere around the world, quickly into South America, the long-standing drought and heat in parts of Brazil, specifically Mato Grosso do Sul, and Goiás continues. The flooding down south also continues. But there was a bit of a model battle over the weekend. We watched the GFS expand the dryness in northern Brazil, hitting about probably 30 to 35% of the growing area. It did have better rains in southern Brazil, extending up the eastern side of Brazil, and better rains for Argentina. Now, while that was happening, the European ensemble looked something a bit like this. It was much less extensive on the dryness here, or maybe only hitting about 20% or so of the major growing areas, still in the Amazon too, but it was much more generous with the rainfall across a broader section of Brazil over the next 15 days. So that needs to be watched very carefully. My last slide for you on this quick update, take a look how cold it's going to get this week in Europe. We're expecting some bigger snows throughout Europe. And it's just a reminder that warm North Atlantic combined with what we expect to be a pretty volatile kind of Arctic North Atlantic pattern could send Europe into several of these kind of brief but extensive shots at colder air. But over the next 10 days, globally on precip, I think the biggest surprise is how wet it continues to be across Australia. I mean, we have an El Nino going right now, but if those trade winds don't behave like typical El Nino trade winds, you can get moisture back into a place that typically expected to be dry. So that was quick, but that's what we want to cover. We'll talk to you again tomorrow morning. Thanks.